The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's western slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christi and Reece and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the western slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle. Hello, everyone. I'm Christi and Reece. Welcome back to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Reece Stanley, today. Welcome, Reece.
Thank you, Christi.
And we are excited to have as our guest, Fire Chief for the City of Grand Junction, Ken Watkins. Welcome, Ken.
Oh, thank you. Excited to be here and to do the podcast with you.
Thank you. So usually we start off with our guest talking about kind of how you ended up in Grand Junction. How long have you lived here?
I've lived here almost 17 years. I have a little family history here. That's kind of what brought me here. But my mom and her side of the family was raised in Dept.
Oh, wow. Not a lot of people can say that.
No. So she left for Denver when she was 18, and so I grew up in Denver. What brought me back here, brought me here was I was interested in becoming a fire chief. I was already working for quite a while for a fire department on the Front Range, and I wanted to be a fire chief, so I applied for the job here in Grand Junction. And I had the family ties, and so I also had a family an aunt that I was close to that had some medical issues that I wanted to come over and help take care of. So those few things brought me over here to Grand Junction.
What was it? What's the difference, the major difference between being a firefighter and a fire chief that made you seek that position?
Sure. So I started out as a firefighter, went up through the ranks, essentially worked in every position on the fire department. But at some point, I decided I wanted to get into leadership and management. And so I went back to college and finished my bachelor's degree and then a master's degree also. And then that basically set me up for a fire chief's position. So, you know, the position itself is leadership management. It's an administrative job. People ask me all the time, you know, how often I go out on a fire. It's pretty rare for me to go on a fire. I mean, if I go out on a fire 2 or 3 times a year, that's a lot. So, you know, we have excellent staff that cover all that. And if it's a large incident or something like that, I might end up on a fire. But really, that's up to the operational chiefs that are on the department.
And you mentioned before we got started recording that your fire department is city-based, but you also contract out with the rural fire areas. Can you explain how that works? Sure.
And maybe it helps to understand the county itself, maybe. So Mesa County has 10 different fire departments. Most of them are in the Grand Valley. Of course, there's a fire department. Dept has its own fire department. Plateau Valley, which is up on covers Powderhorn in the Mesa. And so Grand Junction itself, we cover the city of Grand Junction, all the city limits. And then we've had a contract agreement for service with the Grand Junction Rural Fire Protection District for a long time, since 1944. So it's been So they don't have fire stations or people or fire trucks. And so we provide all that for them under this service contract. And that essentially is 3 different sides of the city. They surround us on 3 different sides. Up north, a lot of the areas in the Redlands is the rural district, and then some of the areas in Orchard Mesa.
Mm-hmm. And what year was it when the fire department took over a lot of the emergency services that were happening with ambulances alone, with the ambulance contractors?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So that was right before I came. What set up that change was in 2004, the county wrote a emergency medical service resolution. And that set, basically what it did is divided the county into ambulance service areas, and they roughly followed the fire district boundaries. And so the county wanted to do that because there was some concern about the coverage throughout the county for medical services. So by basically dividing the county up into service areas, that provided that ability to provide ambulance service in those areas. In 2006 is when the city, in that resolution, the city had the ability to select who the service provider would be in the city. So in 2006, they selected the fire department to provide that service. And so the Grand Junction Fire Department has been providing ambulance service since then. A lot of people don't realize that the fire department had ambulances before then. just they served as a backup to the ambulance providers that were already here. And so it's not new to the fire department. We were providing that service. We had paramedics, we had EMTs, all that. So.
And Reece, you were on the fire department for a number of years.
I was, yeah. I was under Chief Watkins' leadership, as well as a lot of the other great employees over there for just shy of 5 years, both as an EMT and firefighter. With you leading the department for 17 years, you said, Chief?
Just about.
Yeah, I imagine you've seen a lot of changes, both in the size of personnel, how many stations, call volume, all those things. What does that look like in your time as chief?
Yeah, it's been exciting, really. And I'll just start by saying, Reece, we miss you. So when you want to come back, let me know.
Nope.
Reece was a great employee for us. So we hate to see people leave, but we always want to support people's passions. So, so in my time, I came in 2007, right after the ambulance service started for the city. The department at that time was around 100 employees. We had 5 fire stations. We had recently built Fire Station 5 in the Redlands. And so now we are 185 employees, 7 stations. We're just getting ready to build the 8th station. Actually, we're going through the design process right now. So when I arrived here, I recognized right away that we were short of fire stations based on the call volume and the size of the city. So we attempted to do that earlier on than when we're currently doing it, but we needed to secure the funding. And so that funding was secured in 2019 with the first responder tax, thanks to our Grand Junction citizens that voted for that. So yeah, a lot of change with the additional stations, additional personnel, additional apparatus. Budget-wise, the fire department budget has grown from, I'm trying to remember what it was when I got here. It was around maybe 10 million, 8 to 10 million. This year, my budget is $33.5 million to run the fire department. So that's a big budget. Most of our budget is people because we're a service agency. So, and then the call volume, like you mentioned, the call volume has gone from about 10,000 calls to last year we ran just under 22,000 calls. So, I
have a couple of questions. Number one, I'm sorry to say that I'm not up to speed on the tax. Is that ongoing funding that's consistent ongoing funding for the fire district?
Yeah, so it's a half-cent sales tax. And so when people shop in Grand Junction and buy something, then it's additional half-cent over our existing sales tax that we had. But it is ongoing, and the reason it's ongoing is because it is the main purpose of the funding is to pay for the personnel that we've hired for those fire stations, and then the other part of the first responder tax is for the police department. So it's a shared tax. It's the same kind of thing. It's to pay for additional police officers, civilian personnel at the police department also.
And is the expansion driven by a number of factors? Is it population-based? Is it call-based? Is it geographically based? I mean, you can only cover a certain area with one fire station?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for us, for the fire department, the growth... I'm sorry, could you repeat that again? I think I went down the wrong path.
No, so the expansion of new structures and things like that and hiring more people... How do you, what do you base that on? Is it because of the volume of calls? Is it because of the population? Is it because of the geography of where the station sits?
Yeah, let me go back to when I arrived here in 2007 and started to look at the service that we were providing. With my experience that I was with another fire department for 25 years. I was the deputy chief of administration when I left there to come here to be the chief. So I had a lot of experience already. And I started to look at the volume of calls that we were running and also where we were running them from. The issue that we had here in Grand Junction at the time was and it's not unlike other communities that have grown. Basically, all of our fire stations were in basically a core circle area of the existing community, but the city had grown exponentially outside of that circle, basically. Station 5 was built, so that was fine. It was helping to cover the Redlands. But we really didn't have any close fire stations up to the north, or out toward Orchard Mesa. We had a Station 4 that was kind of in Orchard Mesa, is right on the edge of it. And so the issue with that is response times. So when we have a critical call, cardiac arrest, major accident, something that we really need to get there quick, we had response times that we really couldn't affect because our locations are too far away. As the community grows, the call volume goes up, which creates it exponentially makes that an issue, because then as units are going out of their area to cover other areas, then their areas are getting uncovered. So we started looking at where do we need the additional fire stations. The other thing that we look at for fire station location is we just about everything that we do in the fire service is under guidelines from the National Fire Protection Association. And so they have guidelines for how fast we should respond on a call based on the size of our community, the type of community. That's all of our response times. And there's detail related to that. And then we also try to fit into what is called the Insurance Service Office regulations, which affects communities' fire insurance rating, and in turn affects people's insurance premiums. And so that agency will also say you need a fire engine to respond within this distance, or you need a ladder truck to respond within this distance. So we put all that together and decide, okay, where's the best location for a fire station where we can meet these criteria to improve the service that we provide to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To speak to that point about expansion, where is the new fire station located that you guys are going to be building?
Yeah, so this is our northwest station. It's at 2351 H Road.
Okay.
Right on the corner of 23.5 and H.
Lot of new residents out in that area.
Yeah, exactly. We actually did a heat map a couple of years ago. We did a heat map of where all the predicted growth was going to be, and the two areas were northwest and southeast. We built Station 8. We opened it last year. It's in the southeast area, and so it's covering that growth, and then this one will cover the northwest growth.
Awesome. And are you having to go, and maybe it's a combination of both, are you having to go acquire properties as well as have some that are owned by city, county, or has the fire department been planning for a long time and have parcels around the valley?
Yeah, good question. We do all of that. So I'll give you some examples of what we've done with that, because I think we've been pretty creative, and we really try to save taxpayer dollar when we're looking for property or when we're trying to build these stations. So Station 6, which was the first station that we built under the first responder tax, was part of the city-owned park property that was undeveloped up on 27 Road, just north of G. And so we met as a city leadership team. I talked about the need to have a fire station in that area, talked one-on-one with the park director. Could we carve off an acre and a half for a fire station on that park site? That seemed to work well with their master plan for that park too. So that's how that location was decided. So there was no cost to the community. The park ground had originally, it had been in the city's inventory for a long time. So the station we just opened, we actually purchased the property from a private owner, worked with them in a negotiation. Actually the last two sites we've bought, we purchased through buying through a private owner. Station 3, which was not part of the first responder tax, but we did build a new station to replace an old station. That was a land swap agreement with the school district. So there was no money that changed hands, but the school district had property right there that they were using as a parking lot, and it made sense that we put the fire station on the parking lot. And then in turn, what we did was we built a new parking lot for the school, for Pomona Elementary. So
wonderful.
And just to finish that, I guess we do try to plan in advance. So if I know we have a station coming up or then it's like looking out in advance, way before we're going to build the station, a couple of years before. Where is the land available? Where do we need the land? What location do we need to look for? This station that we are just getting ready to, that we're in the design phase for right now, we looked at 6 or 8 sites in that northwest area. We were working with an out-of-state developer for a while on a land donation. that fell through, but that was another option. We were trying to move down the path of getting a developer to donate land for the station. Yeah.
And then obviously with additional stations requires additional personnel. What does the recruitment efforts around that look like? And then what does that time period look like for bringing on new employees in those roles?
Yeah, great question, because that's a struggle, I think, for many businesses, and including the government, government and the city. And so we have a ratio that we look for the number of employees we need at a fire station. So obviously a fire station is a 24/7 operation, 365 days a year. So if we're going to put a fire engine or ladder truck at a station, then we have a certain number of people that we need to staff that with. And if we're putting an ambulance at the station, same thing, certain number of people to staff that ambulance with. So we look for 21 people for each of these new stations, because that's what we need for both a fire truck and an ambulance. When I say 21 people, that's for the around-the-clock, 365 days. That doesn't mean there's that many there every day. Every day there might be anywhere from 5 to 7 people in that station, but ultimately we need 21 people. So we do our own fire academy. So in Colorado, fire academies are a local effort. There's some states, they have state academies that do all the recruit training, but not in Colorado. So that's a piece that we also are involved in. But going back to recruiting, so we will open up a recruitment for firefighter. If we're going to do a spring academy, which is what we have going on right now, we start recruiting around May, the May before we open up recruitment, because it does take about 4 to 5 months to get through the recruiting process. As you can imagine, there's a lot of steps to go through the recruiting. There's physical requirements. There's background requirements. We do interview processes, all those things. But we try to get through that process sometime in late fall and make job offers to people so that they know, when the academy is starting. Especially these last few academies, we've had a number of people that are coming from out of state. So we want to make sure that we're being, aware that they need to move, and find a place to live and all that kind of thing.
Obviously, some of the roles are very demanding physically, and so they have to go through a physical test as well, correct? That's part of the academy?
It's actually part of the recruitment. So we are using a national sanctioned test. That's probably not the right language that I'm using, but it's called CPAT. It's Candidate Physical Ability Testing for Firefighter. It's a recognized test that is used all over the country. There are a number of standards. Well, first of all, we have to be certified to even run that test. So we have people on the department that have passed certification to run that test. The beauty of that test is someone can take our test or a test somewhere else, and if they have their certificate, they can just bring it and show that they've proven that they can do that test. But there are parameters that we have to offer. We have to offer practice sessions to the candidates before they're actually tested, so they are familiar with the test, and then they run through the test. The test essentially is testing someone on firefighter skills in a way that you don't have to have the experience as a firefighter yet, but you have to demonstrate that you can do firefighter techniques to pass the test. And so that's part of the recruitment, as I was saying. And then once someone gets into the academy, it's extremely physical. I think Reece can probably help answer that question from his academy, but physical fitness is a critical part of being a firefighter. I don't know how many people realize how physically demanding the job is when you're actually on a fire scene. It's a different environment because you are doing so much physically in such a short time to make a difference on a fire. And so and what's really important about it, if you're going to be a firefighter, is you have to adopt a fitness lifestyle. You can't just pass the test and get on the fire department and then not do it. So fitness has to be part of your lifestyle every single day. And we encourage that. All of our fire stations have gym equipment. We have, under our standard operating procedures, there's a certain amount of time that people have to that are allowed to work out on duty. And then we have testing, for our incumbent people, making sure they're
ongoing.
staying in shape. Ongoing, yeah.
You didn't fail one of those ongoing tests?
No, thankfully I never failed one of those tests. No. But, to your point about having to stay physically fit, there's firefighters. Well, you guys have a couple young firefighters now, right? I think I heard you guys hired like maybe a 20-year-old or something, which isn't real common in the department, but upwards of, I think when I was there was an engineer that was 62 when he left. So, and all the personnel have to pass that test, right? So it doesn't matter what position you're in. If you're going to be out on the fires, you gotta be able to be fit.
It feels like when I see the young, it's like they're 12 when I see them.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I'll walk by college campus and like middle schoolers. Yeah.
That's great. Training them early, though. It's got to feel good to get some folks in there that have that dedication at an early age and want to be in that role. In addition to physical fitness, firefighters also have a reputation for being great cooks. You do a lot of cooking while they're on the job, right?
Yep. So not everyone understands that environment, but so our firefighters work, now they work a 48-hour shift. So that's a I shouldn't say fairly new, but it's a shift that we moved to a few years ago. So
from what was it before?
We had a 24-hour shift where they worked 24 on, 24 off for 3 days in a row, and then they had additional days off. We moved to what's called the 48-96 shift, which is two 24-hour days in a row on duty, and then they get 4 days off. It's essentially the same amount of hours they were working before, but it allows the firefighter the ability to have more weekends with their family. The other shift, the weekends were basically always broke up. You were either working a Saturday or a Sunday. So that's a helpful thing for families. This doesn't affect us very much, but a lot of fire departments move to it for commuting purposes, or a lot of the mountain departments use it because people can't afford to work as a firefighter and live in Vail, or so they commute from a farther distance away. But that can be, so you're on duty 48 hours, so obviously you're going to eat. Contrary to what some people might believe, the city does not pay for the food. The firefighters supply their own food. And so they will go shopping on duty. So you may see our fire crews at the store shopping. I have
seen, yes. Yeah. I'm always curious about what they're making too.
Yeah.
Like, what are they buying?
And to your question, Christi, we do have some really good cooks, and even people that maybe haven't cooked, but they get to be good cooks. And there's another question that Reece can probably answer. I can talk about it from my days in the firehouse, which are a while ago. But when I was in the firehouse, if you were good at a specialty, then you cooked your specialty. So it's not always the same person cooking. It just depends on what the crew wants to have that day.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about safety aspects of your job and how we can inform our citizenry in Grand Junction and Mesa County to be more safe with fire and all the things that can potentially cause a fire, and focus maybe on fire as opposed to, the ambulance type calls that you go on. So there's a lot of reasons for that, but talk a little bit about fire safety and what people can be doing better.
Yeah, thanks. I think still, probably I haven't seen our statistics yet because we're working on our annual report. But if I had to guess, I would say our most common fire cause is probably still kitchen fires. That's pretty much across the country. Safety in the kitchen, food on the stove fires, those kind of things. Sometimes those are minor. Someone realizes it and calls and we get it out quick. Sometimes it takes off from there. But most of our fires are going to be human caused, either through something that happens like that. Maybe it's carelessness, not paying attention, those kind of things. Certainly, we do go on fires that are related to maybe an electrical fire, some kind of electrical problem. Those happen too. So, but when you really think about safety, I think our citizens really have a lot to do with that, and a lot of that is paying attention. If you're burning candles, making sure those are out, being careful around the stove. We do have some fires that are caused outside, sometimes smoking, where people are throwing a cigarette into landscaping material next to their house, and then we have a fire on the outside of the house. I was trying to think of some other examples that happen that are fairly common that our folks see. But I would say those are the most of it. And other types of smoking fires too, smoking in the house, those kind of things.
And obviously, good working smoke and fire alarms are super important. And I know the local Red Cross helps with that. Fire extinguishers also. What other things can people do to make sure they have the equipment available to help them if a fire starts?
Yeah, number one is smoke detector, because the smoke detector, if you do have a fire, and especially at night, you want to be able to be alerted to get out. So making sure you have a working smoke detector that has working batteries. Smoke detectors mostly are rated for 10 years. There are better technology smoke detectors now that where you don't have to change batteries. And so if you're changing your smoke detector, I'd recommend looking into those. But yeah, once you have that, certainly fire extinguishers around the kitchen area, garage area is always good to have. Another important thing to think about is an exit plan for your home, especially if you have a family. And so sitting down with your kids and having a discussion about, okay, if we had a fire or something happened, how would we get out? And where is our meeting place so that we know where to go? Our folks that work in community outreach, they are constantly going out to schools and other facilities to make sure people understand these ways to keep themselves safe.
I feel like that's something that we could talk about with our clients. Like, I don't know how many of our clients do have a plan for exiting their home. I don't. Yeah.
Bringing you back to real estate a little bit and the way that we intertwine with the fire department, how do you guys play a role in like new developments and fire code and, just building construction as a whole, where the fire hydrants are placed? How do you guys play into that?
Yeah, great question. A lot. So under the fire code, which is adopted basically every 3 years, it changes, but we adopt it every 6 years. There are a number of requirements that are related to both, the built environment, I would say, and then to the neighborhoods as far as access, those kind of things. So I'll start with that. So the first thing that happens, let's say a new neighborhood's going to go in, or a new commercial building or something is going to come in. So we have a fire prevention bureau, number of employees there, 6 employees that will meet with the developer or the builders, whichever that project is being managed by. And they'll start to talk about access. How do we make sure that we have access into that neighborhood for fire trucks? So there are requirements how wide a street can be. If depending on the development, if they're trying to make it more of what we call a skinny street development, which happens sometimes, then there's other requirements that the developer will have to meet, which could be turnarounds or places for the fire truck, because we have to be able to get the trucks in and to be able to get them out. And so that's part of the process. Fire hydrants also, there's regulations for how far a fire hydrant should be from the next fire hydrant, how far from the street, those kind of things. So that all gets looked at early on in the process before anything is ever built. If it's a residential development, then really we kind of back off from that. So there's certainly the building department has the building code, and that's here in Mesa County, we're under a county building code through Mesa County Building Department. And our fire prevention people will certainly work with them, but they basically have all the regulations for the building itself. If it's a commercial building, we get involved again with we get involved with exiting somewhat, but that's also part of the building code. The main thing we get involved in is fire protection systems. So if it's a commercial building and it's going to require fire sprinkler systems or fire alarm system, if it's some kind of a special process, some kind of a hazardous materials process, then we get involved in that. Even like IT rooms, where we get involved in those, because sometimes those systems are pretty complicated.
Yeah, and then the fire department constructs annual fire inspections ongoing from there, right? which allows for the firefighters to familiarize with those buildings in the event that they were to respond to an event there. And how often do the buildings have to be inspected? Is that every year or?
It depends. So yeah, you're correct. We do have an inspection program. It depends on the severity of that's not the right term I'm looking for. It depends on, I guess, the safety level of the building or the occupancy, what type of operation is going in there. So we have some businesses. Let me back up and start over on that, can I? Just to, I'm looking for the right word for that. So for our inspection program, we don't do residential inspections. So a lot of people are maybe confused with that. So we have a voluntary residential inspection program. So if someone wants us to come to their house and do a fire inspection and basically a safety review, we will offer that and we will do that. But that in the fire code, we don't require that. But in commercial businesses where there's going to be people that are coming in and out of the business, that don't live there, then we do get involved in that. And so our inspection program is based on the danger, I guess, involved in the occupancy and the operation that's going on there. So some businesses are inspected every year. Those are going to be businesses that have assembly areas where there's a lot of people congregating, and you could have an incident there that a lot of people could get harmed. They're going to be the ones that have a hazardous material operation that has a higher chance of a fire. A lot of our hospital assisted living where you have a population that can't get out on their own, those are going to be the ones that we inspect more frequently. And then all the way down to just office areas where the only thing we really are looking at is exit lights, signage, extension cords, those kind of things. That might be every 3 years. So.
I want to shift a little bit and talk about wildfires. And what are you all, how are you involved in the wildfire fighting, and what's your role?
Yeah, great. Because we are Western Colorado, where we see a lot of wildfire. That's an interesting question, because when I arrived here, one of the questions that I was asked by my boss was, what are the things that keep me up at night? And I said, well, wildfire keeps me up at night is one of the things, because we didn't have an organized wildfire response team in Grand Junction, which surprised me. Coming from the Front Range, I thought for sure there would be an organized wildfire team. And so all of our firefighters are trained to fight wildfires. But we have, since about 2011, I believe is when we started the wildfire team, we have a group of employees, about 30 employees that have higher level certification in wildland firefighting. And those employees, we also deploy out to other fires. And there's a reason we do that. I'm glad you asked the question, because sometimes people don't understand why we do that. But if there is a wildfire in an area, then the local fire department is first on the scene, and they're going to do what they can to put it out. But at some point, if the fire is too big or is continuing to get bigger, then they will have to ask for assistance. And usually the first step is to ask for assistance through the county. That opens up state funding to help with the fire. And then the fire might just be a state fire. And so then you'll start to get responding units from across the state. But if it continues to grow, then it'll turn into a federal fire. And then that brings in federal resources from all across the country. And so our wildland firefighting team, we deploy them during the wildland season to help other agencies with those type of fires. So our team, and we only send 4 people at a time on one unit. So they've been all over the West in the time that they've been in existence. California, Idaho, Montana, Washington, all of those. We get completely reimbursed for all of that. So our costs for sending the team, we get reimbursed for through the state and in turn through the federal government. But what that brings us is it brings our firefighters the experience to work in a large incident like that and how that works, the whole command and control.
Invaluable for them to bring that back here.
And they bring that back, but then it also allows, if we have the large incident, then we're on the receiving end of that, so, and we have had large fires here, not necessarily right in the city area, but just outside of the city. where we've had large incidents, and units from all over the country have come to help us. So it is a shared way to fight fires across the region and across the country.
And are those crews provided with vehicles that are locally based also?
Yeah, they take our vehicles. We have essentially 3 wildland firefighting brush trucks, basically. And they will take 1 or 2 of the trucks. We always keep one of them here in case we have a fire here. And it's kind of rare for us to send 2 teams out at the same time. Mostly we send 1 team, but if it is a bad fire season, then sometimes we will send 2. We also get reimbursed for the truck, and so the state or the federal government rents the truck from the city, and so we get reimbursed for our costs for sending the truck, and so that actually provides some funding that comes back to support the team. Our second brush truck that we bought for the team was basically paid for with reimbursements for fires that they were on the couple seasons before. So it's a good use to bring in funding, help the team, and then in turn that helps our local community because we have those trucks right here for service also.
On that same note, as far as multi-agency response, Grand Junction Fire Department is the largest fire department in the valley, but you guys often will respond with Lower Valley or Clifton. What does that look like? And do you guys do some training with those departments? And then just speaking forward, 5-10 years from now, what do you see the valley, how that shapes up? Is there going to be one large department at any given point? Or do you just see it staying how it is?
Yeah. So we do train together so it really boils down to a couple agreements that we have, which are not uncommon in the fire service across the country. So if you think about it, a fire department really can't staff up or have enough apparatus for the largest event that could happen. There's just, it just wouldn't make sense to do that. And so across the United States, fire departments use mutual aid and automatic aid agreements to have the support for those large incidents. Or when either the large incident or when the call volume is so high that they are having a hard time keeping up with it. So that happens right here in Mesa County. So we have a countywide mutual aid agreement that all of the fire departments are signers on, including the airport fire department, which is interesting. So if we have a large event, then we would get support from basically what the agreement says is we're going to send units and firefighters to help as long as we can provide it from what's going on in our own jurisdiction. We also have 2 automatic aid agreements, which means, and that's with Lower Valley and Fruita and with Clifton. And those are basically says that if they have this type of incident, then we're automatically sending people. And so those are pre-set up, so we don't have to worry about anything legally or liability wise. But there is a lot of that goes on every day. And so either we're providing service to another agency or an agency might be providing service to us. That's less, usually we're providing the service because we are the larger department. We have more units available to go help the other departments. That's how that system works. To your larger question about where do I see it going, in the fire service, there's been a lot of consolidations. The Front Range is a great example of that, where a lot of departments have merged together. It's good government to take a look at that, I think. Try to provide less layers of government. It's more efficient to do it that way. However, there are some parameters that make it difficult to do. So the community might remember that last year we spent basically the entire year looking at whether we should essentially merge with Clifton. That's really not what we were looking to do. We were looking to provide a service agreement for Clifton, and then we would be working together for response. But that came to fruition where it just wasn't quite right for the time for that to happen. So I think everything is, when's the right timing to do something like that? There's politics involved, there's finances involved, there's people involved. And so I think at some point in the future that could happen. We've had a couple small consolidations with small fire departments that have consolidated together here in Mesa County. But I think the trend will be to to try and move that way over time, because it does make sense, and it is probably more efficient for to provide the service in that way.
As we're wrapping up, Ken, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing your department right now? And maybe it's fire departments in general, or maybe it's yours specifically. What do you see this year? What are you worried about besides wildland and fire?
Yeah, well, I mean, we always have challenges, certainly, but we also always have opportunity. And so I think we got to keep that in mind. So I'm excited about the new fire station, getting that construction started and built so we can provide service in that north area for the community. A challenge that we do see, we do have some recruiting challenges. We do get quite a number of people that apply for the job, but once we get down through the whole process, then we end up with a limited number of qualified candidates. And so, back in the day, we used to get hundreds and hundreds of applicants for a firefighter. When I was hired as a firefighter, I tested against 700 people for 5 jobs. So it's not quite like that anymore. Some of the larger departments, Denver, LA, they would get thousands of people that would apply. And so that's a little bit of a challenge. So for us as a fire department service, we need to get our message out better about what the job is, because I think people have some misunderstanding about the job. The job is safe. It pays well. It has good benefits. It's a great family-friendly job. One of the things we hear is it's not family-friendly because of the schedule, but it really is family-friendly. So that's one issue that I think that we need to work on, just getting those applicant numbers up. We have an issue, like a lot of businesses or industries right now, with supply chain that is really causing us issues with actually purchasing what we call fire apparatus, which is fire trucks and ambulances and that kind of thing. So it's the same thing that other businesses are seeing, where either there's certain parts that are being delayed, and so we used to be able to, if I was going to buy a new fire truck, I used to be able to turn in an order for a fire truck and I'd see it within a year or so. We just met with our manufacturer and our fire apparatus dealer, and for the type of fire truck that we buy right now, which all of our trucks are custom, we're looking at 52 months from the time that we order to the time we get it. That is really unacceptable. We can't wait that long. We need to be able to get back to some time frame of a year to 2 years when we order a fire truck. And it's a really challenge because, we're tying up money to buy that truck that it could be used for other purposes. And so we're trying to figure out a way to make sure we can get the trucks ordered and get them, online. And so working with our dealer for that. See some other challenges I see. Finances is always going to be a challenge, I think, for government. Everybody wants a lot of things to happen. And so the first responder tax is, while it's been it's just been a godsend for the fire department to get the new stations and the people we need, but it's what I would call plateauing out. And so it'll continue to pay for these personnel and these stations that we're building, but we're going to need additional stations in the future, and we'll need more people in the future as this community grows. And so right now it doesn't look like the first responder tax would be able to pay for much more expansion. And so we'll have to come up with, the city will have to work and figure out how do we continue to afford expansion of certainly public safety services, but all the services that the city provide. So
it's a lot. So people watching, listening, feel free to jump in city council, county commissioners, right? Don't complain unless you've been involved in making the decisions. It's really challenging to figure out a budget and make everything flow and make sure everybody's safe in our community. Well, we thank you, Mr. Watkins, Chief Watkins, I should say, for joining us today and sharing a lot of your expertise. Reece, you want to close us out?
Yeah, thank you for coming today. It's been really fun seeing the growth in the fire department, and it always puts a smile on my face when I see a fire apparatus out there. So yeah, thanks for all you guys are doing.
Well, thanks. If I could just close with one thing, I got a great job. I got a great team. So I go to work every day, and the best thing that happens to me in my day is when I hear from a citizen about a service that our folks have provided. 99% of the things I hear are good, and they're really positive. So I just appreciate the team that we have here and the work that they do every single day in keeping our community safe. So
wonderful. Thank you again. This is Christi Reece and Reece Stanley signing off for the Full Circle podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Thanks for listening. This is Christi Reece signing out from the Full Circle podcast.